had its source in his own infernal regions. I had risen as high in the church as before in the state. I was, forsooth, the wise, the self-sufficient, the impeachable. I was the counsellor of councils. I was the director of prelates. How should I stumble? Wherefore should I fear temptation? Alas! I became confessor to a sisterhood, and amongst that sisterhood I found the long-lived, the long-lost, spare my further confession, a fallen nun whose guilt was avenged by self-murder sleeps soundlessly in the vaults of Engaddi, while above her very grave gibbers, moans, and roars a creature to whom but so much reason is left as may suffice to render him completely sensible to his fate." "Unhappy man!" said Richard, "I wonder no longer at thy misery. How didst thou escape the doom which the canons denounced against thy offence?" "Ask one who is yet in the gall of worldly bitterness," said the hermit, "and he will speak of a life spared for personal respects and from consideration to high birth. But, Richard, I tell thee that Providence hath preserved me to lift me on high as a light and beacon, whose ashes, when this earthly fuel is burnt out, must yet be flung into the Tophet. Withered and shrunk as his poor form is, it is yet animated with two spirits, one active, shrewd, and piercing, to advocate the cause of the Church of Jerusalem, one mean, abject, and despairing, fluctuating between madness and misery, to mourn over my own wretchedness, and to guard holy relics on which it would be most sinful for me even to cast my eye. Pity me not. It is but sin to pity the loss of such an abject. Pity me not, but profit from my example. Thou standest on the highest, and therefore on the most dangerous pinnacle occupied by any Christian prince. Thou art proud of heart, loose of life, bloody of hand. Put from thee the sins which are to thee as daughters, though they be dear to the sinful Adam. Expel these adopted furies from thy breast, thy pride, thy luxury, thy bloodthirstiness." "He raves," said Richard, turning from the solitary to De Vaux, as one who felt some pain from a sarcasm which yet he could not resent, then turned him calmly and somewhat scornfully to the anchorite, as he replied, "Thou hast found a fair bevy of daughters, reverend father, to one who hath been but few months married; but since I must put them from my roof, it were but like a father to provide them with suitable matches. Therefore I will part with my pride to the noble canons of the church, my luxury, as thou callest it, to the monks of the rule, and my bloodthirstiness to the knights of the temple." "O heart of steel and hand of iron," said the anchorite, "upon whom example, as well as advice, is alike thrown away! Yet shalt thou be spared for a season, in case it be thou shouldest turn, and do that which is acceptable in the sight of heaven. For me, I must return to my place. Kyrie eleison! I am he through whom the rays of heavenly grace dart like those of the sun through a burning glass, concentrating them on other objects, until they kindle and blaze, while the glass itself remains cold and uninfluenced. Kyrie eleison! The poor must be called, for the rich have refused the banquet. Kyrie eleison!" So saying, he burst from the tent, uttering loud cries. "A mad priest," said Richard, from whose mind the frantic exclamations of the hermit had partly obliterated the impression produced by the detail of his personal history and misfortunes. "After him, De Vaux, and see he comes to no harm; for, crusaders as we are, a juggler hath more reverence against our varlets than a priest or a saint, and they may, perchance, put some scorn upon him." The knight obeyed, and Richard presently gave way to the thoughts which the wild prophecy of the monk had inspired. To die early, without lineage, without lamentation, a heavy sentence, and well that it is not passed by a more competent judge. Yet the Saracens, who are accomplished in mystical knowledge, will often maintain that he, in whose eyes the wisdom of the sage is but as folly, inspires wisdom and prophecy into the seeming folly of the madman. Yonder hermit is said to read the stars too. an art generally practised in these lands, where the heavenly host was of yore the object of idolatry. I would I had asked him touching the loss of my banner, for not the blessed Tishbite, the founder of his order, could seem more wildly rapt out of himself, or speak with a tongue more resembling that of a prophet. How now, De Vaux, what news of the mad priest?" "Mad priest, call you him, my lord?" answered De Vaux. "Methinks he resembles more the blessed Baptist himself, just issued from the wilderness. He hath placed himself on one of the military engines, and from thence he preaches to the soldiers as never man preached since the time of Peter the Hermit. The camp, alarmed by his cries, crowd around him in thousands, and, breaking off every now and then from the main thread of discourse, he addresses the several nations, each in their own language, and presses upon each the arguments best qualified to urge them to perseverance in the delivery of Palestine." "By this light, a noble hermit," said King Richard. "But what else could come from the blood of Godfrey? He despair of safety, because he hath in former days lived paramours? I will have the Pope send him an ample remission, and I would not less willingly be intercessor had his Belle Amie been an abbess." As he spoke, the Archbishop of Tyre craved audience, for the purpose of requesting Richard's attendance, should his health permit, on a secret conclave of the chiefs of the Crusade, and to explain to him the military and political incidents which had occurred during his illness. Chapter 19.